Good afternoon and welcome back to the lab. I still need to clean this stuff up, but I've got a plan, I've got designs, I've picked up materials, so we're going to build ourselves a camera rig so I don't have to do this back and forth and make you dizzy. And instead we're going to have an overhead situation that should be a little easier for me to work with and allow me to do a literal zoom up and down as needed. So first thing is I'm going to turn on that fan, turn on some lights, and actually make use of these containers here. Okay, let's talk plans. Maybe a little hard to tell from my crude drawing here, but this squiggly line here is just a separator. That's the workbench. That's 1, 2, 3 shelves. Because I kind of 1, 2, 3 shelves, and I put a couple. Third shelf. I put up a couple of pieces of tape because the mountings are going to be on the top 2 shelves. Sorry about that. Once I get this thing all put together, this will be so much easier to do. Although my drawings will probably be just as crude. There's going to be 2 vertical pieces and another cross piece holding that together on the top, and there's going to be what I'm calling a carrier and a trap, and the carrier on the bottom will be the actual for carrying the phone, and it's designed in such a way that my phone will just sort of hang over the edge of it because the lens for the camera is on one end of the camera, so I only need to support it enough to keep it from falling over. But the beauty of having just basically a kind of an open box, a 4-sided box, so it can stick out on this side and it'll be open on the top, but it'll be sized the same as the phone. And that carrier will then, the back piece will be mounted to this and mounted at the very bottom. So ultimately, there's going to be a couple of supports on each shelf to sort of trap this whole contraption, and then it'll all be able to move down and up with the carrier on it, and it'll lock in place using the trap, which is basically just 2 pieces of wood with a bolt running through and a wing so that I can tighten it up quickly. So that's kind of the design in theory. Now I've got to start building it. Okay, so now I can finally give you a first sort of visual. This is the main piece on this, and this kind of matches with what I was showing there to some degree. This is the piece that the carrier is going to mount on, and actually it occurred to me that if I just do the mounting a little bit differently, I can have a carrier for the cell phone, or I can use, let's see where did I put it. Oh, it's out. Imagine this, but with a wing on it. And if I go from the back, sticking through, this is a 1/4 inch, 20 threads per inch bolt, and that will fit a standard tripod mount for a camera. So I could actually have that right dead center in here, and I'd be able to mount a camera, a regular SLR or digital, basically a higher end camera than just a phone, although nowadays some phones cost $1,000. And anyway, and the piece at the top there is actually a stop. So when it gets to the top shelf, let me see if I can put this up there. So basically imagine another piece sticking out, a piece in the front and a piece in the back. And so when this comes down, it's going to hit that piece and stop. So it can't come down any further than this, which is just above the hinges in my fan, but it is what it is. We'll work with that. I can always turn off the fan when I'm shooting. But that kind of gives you an idea. And there's a stop at the bottom so it doesn't go too high. And there's going to be the whole capture device. So we've still got to get all that put together, but we're moving forward. All right, the first trap is built. And it's actually this. Yeah, this is kind of hard to do without having something overhead, which is the whole point of all this, but this is basically 2 pieces screwed together and this is called a T-nut, T-E-E nut, and that allows me to screw that in, or put that bolt in. How can I explain this? Originally this T-nut was supposed to be on the other side, but as it turns out, when I went shopping for parts, this is really what I wanted to use, was this. It's like a 2-inch wing screw, even though it's actually a bolt, but it's called a wing screw, and the idea was that was going to go through and it would make it easy for me to just use the wings to tighten it up. But ultimately this trap's going on the top, so when I went shopping they only had one of the 2-inch, even though they had like 5 of them in the 2-inch section. It's those drawers that you get, that you see with all the specialty bolts and what have you, specialty hardware, and they only had one of them. There was 5 packages in there, but they were all other things that had just been misfiled, so I refiled them for them. But probably shouldn't do that in the middle of a pandemic, touching everything. But I'm not sick, at least as far as I know. We'll find out in 2 weeks, I guess. But so they only had the one, so I had to go to spare parts that we have around here, and I finally found a bolt that has the right thread, and it's almost long enough, and it's got the flathead screwdriver thing, so I can ultimately put this where it needs to go and then use the screwdriver to tighten it up. It's not going to be super tight because ultimately those 2 pieces of wood for the rig that I just showed you, one's going to be here, one's going to be here, and this is basically just a vise clamping down on it. I understand that the T-nut being on this side could ultimately pull out, but I don't plan on putting a ton of weight on this, and ultimately the whole thing will probably drop and stop here before it starts to come off, and I can always just keep tightening it up and see, or someday later I might be able to actually find another 2-inch and be able to put that in place. So it should be good for temporary and get me going. So I guess the next step is for me to go get the ladder so I can get up to that top shelf and mount this part, which then means I can put the rig up and hang it on this, and then I can work on building another one of these traps. Alright, I gotta be honest, some of you are probably gonna say I told you so. But what ended up happening was I was completely wrong. Having the T-nut on the inside there, it just pulled right out as soon as I mounted this up on the top shelf. So I've ultimately gone and found another bolt that's just a little bit longer, and I mounted the T-nut on the outside, and I figure what I can do is with this on the shelf, see if I can sort of, it's really kind of hard to do one-handed. I'll be able to swing it around like that. Hopefully that's not making you too dizzy. But I'll be able to swing it around like that and clamp it down. So that's the plan. Now let's hope that works. I'm going to go back up and remount it. Okay, step in the right direction. Now we have that, and I can pull it down. Yeah, it kind of slips loose while I'm going, but then up at the top it stops. So, I mean, I could push it over a little bit, maybe. That's something I didn't really think about in the original design, but now I've got this thing down here, so it's only this far above the workbench, which is not a whole lot of space to be looking at now. It's actually going to come out a little bit further with the mount, so I think I'm going to be okay. Now I got to build the actual carrier. Okay, I think I'm about done. I did correct the problem I was having with the stability left to right. Let me loosen that up a little bit. Now when I, oh, come on, don't make me look silly here. There. When I pull down, it wobbles a little, but it's not too bad. And the basic solution was I added another block in back here, or you can see that little piece of paper that's actually the label on the end of the thing. And that basically just is a spacer that keeps it from moving left and right. And I put another one up on the top also. And you can now see that's kind of resting. And before I did it, I actually leveled it up and down, or plumbed it up. And that way I could figure out where to drill the hole in that block. I'm hoping that's kind of obvious what I did. That just so that it was properly spaced left or right, which would allow it to do what I needed it to do. Now, this is down. That's the maximum it's going to go down. I've got the carrier built right here, and it looks a little, it's not perfect. Actually, here's one of the old blocks that I took out because it was too short for that spacer. But what I'm going to do is, right now, let's go ahead and I'm going to stick this is not exactly how I'm doing it in a finished product, but I can now stick this up in here. There. And what I'll say is, actually I made these blocks as spacers so I can space it further out. If you can imagine these being between the back of this and the carrier. But what I wanted to do was demonstrate the stability and the zoom despite the mess on the workbench. But here we go. We're gonna, let's see, whoops, I'm gonna have to flip you around, because ultimately I need to keep the camera on this side. So here we go. You're going into the cradle. And now I can, in theory, go up and zoom out. Now, yeah, the carrier is not locked, but I can go this far up, and then I can tighten the screw, and that should hold it. And now I've got a work area down here where I can do whatever I need to do. This is the, let's see if we can get some reference points here. Put that in the corner. Now here's part of the problem. So the reason I want the spacers is you can actually see the fan right here. I don't want that to be in the shot. But let's just sort of represent. That's the upper right corner. There's another thing of screws. They're pulled out for various reasons. Slide that into your lower left. And now I can loosen this thing up. When I zoom in, they should both disappear about the same. Come on, there we go, down. And they're going out of frame. And I've probably gone a little side, yeah, I can go a little side to side here. But that's how much I've zoomed in now. Let's move them back into frame, if they'll both fit. Not an endorsement. There we go. Now we'll go back up. See how much of a difference that is. And that's what I wanted, and actually it's at a height where I can still kind of see what I'm doing and whether things are in frame. So, oops, yeah, that's really kind of wobbly that way. But there you go. That's that for project mostly finished. We're going to call it a wrap for now. So, hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something or learned what not to do. Thanks for watching.